Yes, thank you very much for your introduction. I will try to shed some light on heart attacks. And I want to make sure that you all know what's a heart, right? Okay, everybody knows what's a heart. It's a round, symmetric, red thing, like that. We have it in the chest, and it works very well. Well, the truth is, it looks rather like that, a piece of, well, steak, right? It's a blood-pumping, highly efficient blood-pumping organ. It beats like 60 to 200 beats per minute, depending on your activity. And it pumps like 8,000 liters per day. Oh, what's 8,000 liters? Well, just imagine it drinking so much beer per day, right? Impossible. And so, well, it beats in a lifetime something like 2 billion times. It's a number like, it's a 2 with 9 zeros. So it's really, really active organ. And because it's so highly specific and so hard working, it has a disadvantage. If there is some problem with the heart, it may be lethal. So only in Japan, around 12% of annual cause deaths are associated with cardiac diseases. From these, so that are 12%, well, doesn't sound not so much, but that's 100,000 people a year who just die on that. And from this 100,000 people, 60,000 people die on cardiac arrest. So before I explain you what's cardiac arrest, I want to introduce you Bill. Well, this is Bill. Bill, as you can see, he's smiling and he's healthy in the moment. So he receives now an electrocardiogram, an ECG. And as you can see, since he's smiling, his ECG looks normal. Even it looks really bumpy and welly like that, but basically it comes only from the different electric activities from the different compartments in the heart. And to simplify it a bit, we can speak about simple plane waves propagating through the heart. Okay? And each electric wave which propagates through the heart triggers a contraction. And this contraction pumps the blood. Okay? So, well, Bill is for a reason in a hospital. He eventually gets a heart attack. That means these plane waves start to break and a spiral wave appears, which is called tachycardia. These tachycardia tend either to pin on blood vessels or they start to break even more in many, many small spiral waves. And these many, many small spiral waves basically just will hurt like hell because the contraction cannot proceed in a proper way. So as you can see, Bill is not really happy about it. He does not smile anymore. And well, an ECG would sound something like did. You know all from the movies, right? Instead of did kind of relaxing sound, it really goes up. Well, unfortunately, there is no physician around. Really unfortunate. So Bill's heart went into cardiac arrest. And cardiac arrest means the heart is doing anything anymore. There is no electric activity, there is no contraction, and so there is also no blood pumping. Okay? And because of that, well, he is not well, and I don't want to show you Bill's face now. But don't worry, and a physician is on the way and is rescuing him. So he will reanimate him, right? Okay, so I introduce you to the really basic patterns in the heart. You have that normal heart activity, plane waves. You have that spiral waves. You have that fibrillation-like thing, which really hurts, and people cramp on the heart, on their chest. And you have cardiac arrest, and mostly the people get unconscious because there's no blood pumping anymore, right? So how these kind of cardiac diseases are treated? Well, simply spoken, there are two ways nowadays. There is an ICD, which is an implantable cardiac defibrillator, and there's an AED, an automated external defibrillator. So how is that working? So an ICD basically permanently monitors your heart. And once the frequency of the electrical activity is higher than a certain threshold, it will do the following. It just shoots a lot of high frequency waves and pushes that spiral away. And eventually it's stopped and the normal heart activity continues to beat. Well, patient rescued, great. But what happens if the patient has no ICD implanted? Well, an ICD would not work anymore because it is, the heart has already a high frequency. So what we need is a huge electric shock to recover the heart. And we need that huge electric shock because we need to address every single cell in the heart. So we want to excite every single cell in the heart and recover the patterns, okay? And that looks like that. We excite every wave, everything vanishes, and the heart eventually starts to beat again. Well, the same as a cardiac arrest. There are no previous patterns like fibrillation like that, but it kind of animates the heart to beat its natural beat again. that you may see from the movies. Well, the first one didn't work, second one may, okay? So, well, now I explained to you what's in ICD, what's in AED. I want to go a bit into detail. So in AEDs like that, you find in public places, they're hanging all around, and luckily now the technique is so further developed, you don't need to do much, then just push the button. AED will check whether the patient really needs a treatment or not, and okay. So the success rate, when probably and not too late applied, is around 100%. Great. But with that great machine comes some drawbacks. So the first one, not just you have that severe pain, which may lead to dramatic shock of the patient, but also you will burn your skin and eventually also a lot of cardiac cells. And that may lead to the further up complications of the heart. So you may have a heart attack later again. And I said, like, you need a huge electric shock. Well, I wrote 150 joules. So the energy of 150 joules. Amazing, right? Do you know what's 150 joules? Well, nobody knows, right? Maybe some physicists know. So I will imagine. Imagine here's a patient lying on the ground, and you take a 15-kilo heavy weight. You lift it 1 meter above the chest of the patient and let it drop. The energy of the impact of that is comparable to 150 joules. Well, I don't want to have that. Nobody wants to have it, but it works and rescued the patient at least temporarily, hopefully until a happy life, right? So, okay, what are the alternatives? Well, an implantable cardiac defibrillator, an ICD. Well, though they are not that big, well, just a tiny device, you know. The problem is we need to implant it. Mostly it's implanted in the chest. The cables are attached to the heart, and it's permanently monitoring. And once there's a certain threshold overcome, the ACD will, so it means the heart activity shows something like fibrillation, spiral waves. It will apply a high frequency burst of shocks and eventually recover the patient. Well, it works. The advantage is really it works independent. There must be no physician around, and initially you have that spiral waves. It will help you. But again, as I said, it's implantable. That means you need to have an operation. You need to have something in your body. It cannot be good. And the other drawback is the success rate. Once it needs to be applied, it's only 90%. The imagine it's like Russian roulette, right? Out of 10 people, only one will. Well, he will be not that lucky one, right? So that's a problem. So, okay. What can we expect in the future? Are there some other things going on? Yeah, there are a lot of things going on. I just picked one. Well, that is also, and it's an alternative life-saving technique. And now it's called low-energy anti-defibrillation. Well, biologists, medicines gave that nice names, actually, but physicists who introduced that basic concept of it called it just simply virtual electrodes. Why virtual electrodes? Because the heart, with its complex structures, as you can see there, you see all the blood vessels going through the heart, different size, can be utilized to lead to function as a virtual electrode. That means you have an electric far field, similar like an AED, only that you use a very tiny fraction of energy of it. Look at that. Instead of 150 kilogram, 15 kilogram, I'm sorry, 15 kilogram. Now imagine there are just 15 grams, right? It's really different. And so, though it's a bit complicated to explain, I would try to give you an idea about it. So for example, you see the blue image. There is an example. You have the black round, the circle, which is a blood vessel basically. And you give a small electric shock, and it's enough to just originate electric activity, a wave. Okay? So if there would be a spiral wave pinned to that obstacle, you would terminate it. Great. So let's have a bit deeper look. Okay. So imagine we have that two-dimensional heart. And so two-dimension, okay, it's still a bit complicated. Let's go one more. Let's simplify it. Let's go to one dimension. So now you have black cells, which are the cardiac cells, okay? And then you have gray cells. So gray cells are boundary cells and blood vessels that are cells which are not conductive, okay? And you put an electric field, not a huge one, just at 0.1 joule, okay? And if you do that, you induce a charge. And this charge wants to go from plus to minus, okay? Like a usual circuit. And as it goes, so it cannot conduct well to the gray cells. So what it does, it jumps out in the extracellular matrix into the cardiac cell again. And because it jumps in, it excites this tiny cell there. And it continues. It goes to the next place, and it jumps out and in again, and again. And these excited white waves can spread through the heart. So wow, 1D looks really artificial and difficult. So how does it look in 2D? Well, again, we have an electric field really low. We give an external shock, and what you see is you get a wave from the boundary and from the blood vessel. So what is the advantage now of that? Well, as you can see, is we can excite a wave within the heart without touching the heart, okay, with very low energy. And the energy is so low, I want to show you that again, because it's so important. Well, you see that graph. I like graphs, I'm a physicist. You have a horizontal line, it's a size. Starting from a very tiny cell, going to a bigger blood vessels, up to the heart, the shape itself, okay? And then they have the vertical line, it's energy, right? As higher it is, as more energy you have. So, well, I explained to you an AED. 150 joules, remember? 15 kilo. And what happens? Basically, it takes every cell. Okay, because there's so much charge and it cannot conduct at every single cell. It jumps out and in, out and in, out and in. And what happens? Everything gets excited. Okay? So that's good because if you want to recover everything. But it's bad because you burn a lot of tissue and it's maybe not necessary. So what you can do, you can reduce the energy, and so quite a lot. So if you reduce a bit and use the idea of a lead, like low energy anti-defibrillation, okay? And let's say we use it just as much to use lead, okay? So what you get is a wave on the boundary of the cell, of the heart, and at all blood vessels. Well, we don't need all blood vessels. Let's induce it a bit more. So what happens? You get it on the boundary of the cell, of the heart, and on the big blood vessels only. And you can continue like that. Well, then it's not really useful anymore, but you get a wave on the heart only. So that idea is not good. You cannot just reduce the energy, but you can also really address the heart. You can monitor the heart activity and address that heart activity and so the recovery method depending on the problem in the heart. And so you have a reduction in energy, and you can even terminate fibrillation-like state. With a usual ICD, it wouldn't work. Okay? And with that, I want to finish, and I want to thank you for listening. And I want to be really sure that you learned the one thing today, that the heart does not look like that, but this. Okay? Thank you very much.